Chosen one, the debt is not the problem. I know that sounds like the most counterintuitive thing you have heard in a long time. I know that when you look at the numbers, the balance, the interest, the monthly minimum that feels like it is designed to keep you exactly where you are, indefinitely, the debt feels like the very definition of the problem. It feels like the ceiling on everything you are trying to build, the weight on everything you are trying to carry, the noise underneath every financial decision you make, the reason every plan feels slightly out of reach before it even begins. But here is what heaven needs you to understand before this video goes any further. The debt is not the problem. The debt is the symptom. And the thing that produced the symptom, the disconnection between who you are spiritually and what you are experiencing financially, the gap between the destiny written on your life and the circumstances currently surrounding it, that is what God is about to address. Not just the surface number, the entire system underneath it, not just the balance. The architecture of your financial life, rebuilt from the foundation up, according to a design that no creditor has jurisdiction over and no interest rate can reach. You have been fighting a monster with human strength. And the reason the fight has been so exhausting, so long, so relentless, is not because you are weak. It is because you have been bringing natural weapons to a supernatural battle. Today, that changes. Today, you receive the weapon that was always designed to win this specific war. Welcome to Chosen Wealth Wisdom. The Chosen One does not negotiate with debt. The Chosen One activates the law that dissolves it. Before we go any further, here is what I need from you right now. If you have been carrying the weight of debt long enough that it has started to feel like a permanent condition rather than a temporary circumstance, if somewhere beneath the exhaustion and the frustration there is still a voice in your spirit that says, "This is not where I am supposed to stay," type the words "debt-free 2026 inches" the comments right now, not as wishful thinking, as a declaration, as the first spoken word of an agreement you are making with heaven today about the financial season that is already in motion. Drop it right now. And if you are not yet part of the Chosen Wealth Wisdom family, subscribe before you go any further, because what I am releasing in this season is not generic financial encouragement. It is prophetic instruction for chosen ones who are standing at the threshold of the most significant financial transition of their lives. You are here for a reason. Stay with me. Now, let us go all the way into this. Chosen one. 3 days ago, you had a moment of collapse that was actually a moment of breakthrough. Not a collapse in the dramatic sense, a quieter one. You were looking at a number, the specific, heavy, real number of what you owe, and something in you, something that had been fighting and strategizing and calculating and worrying for a very long time, finally ran out of the energy required to keep doing all of that. And in that moment of exhaustion, in that specific place where the striving stopped and the silence came in, you said something to God that you may not have even recognized as a prayer. You said, in whatever words came naturally in that moment, "I cannot do this anymore. I cannot figure this out. I do not have enough. I have run out of solutions, and I need you to be what I cannot be." And the moment those words left your spirit, the moment you stopped trying to be your own guarantor and surrendered that position to the God who created the resources you have been trying to manage, something shifted in the Panaf, invisible realm that is still in the process of becoming visible in the Potter's natural one. Because here is the principle that governs supernatural financial intervention. God cannot be the guarantor of a debt that you are still trying to pay with your own ingenuity. He cannot step into the position of provider while you are still occupying the position of self-sufficient solver. The surrender was not weakness. The surrender was the specific, targeted, spiritually precise act of creating the vacancy that allowed heaven to move in. When you stopped trying, God started working. And what God works, nothing in the natural realm can stop. Now let me give you the 2 Hebrew words that will permanently change the way you understand debt, financial bondage, and the mechanism by which God's law releases people from both. Because without the foundation, what I am about to say will sound like wishful thinking. With the foundation, it will sound like what it actually is, ancient, proven, and operating in your life right now. The first word is neshe, spelled N-E-S-H-E-H. In Hebrew, neshe does not simply mean debt in the administrative, financial sense that we use the word in modern life. The word carries a physical dimension that the English translation completely loses. Neshe means a bite, specifically the bite of a creditor. The image embedded in the word is of something that has sunk its teeth into you and is drawing from you continuously, not taking everything at once, but drawing steadily, persistently, in a way that drains without ever fully consuming. Think about that image carefully, because it is more accurate to the lived experience of debt than any financial description I have ever encountered. Debt does not usually destroy people in a single moment. It drains them. It takes a percentage of every dollar before the dollar can be used for anything else. It claims a portion of every decision before the decision can be made freely. It sits on the chest during sleep and colors the edges of every plan with a low-grade anxiety that never fully goes away. It bites, continuously, steadily, in a way that is not always dramatic, but is always present. That is neshe. That is the spiritual reality of what debt does beyond its financial dimensions. And it is this spiritual reality, this continuous draining, this persistent bite, that makes debt not just a financial problem, but an energy problem, a creativity problem, a destiny problem. Because a person being continuously drained by neshe does not have access to the full, creative, spiritual, visionary energy that their assignment requires. The bite is consuming what the calling needs. The second word is shmita, spelled S-H-E-M-I-T-T-A-H. And this is the word that changes everything. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15, God establishes one of the most radical economic laws in all of human history. Every 7 years, a complete and total release of debt was to occur throughout the entire community. Not a restructuring, not a refinancing, not a reduction in interest rates or an extended payment timeline. A complete cancellation. Every creditor was commanded to release every debtor. Every obligation was dissolved. The financial slate was wiped entirely clean. And the word used for this total release, this radical, divinely mandated cancellation of every financial obligation, is shmita. It means, literally, the release, the letting fall, the complete and intentional dropping of every claim. God did not establish Shemitah as a nice idea or a cultural suggestion. He established it as law, as a built-in, recurring, structurally necessary feature of the economy of a people who were living under his governance. Because he understood something about the nature of debt, about the nature of neshe, that human financial systems have never fully reckoned with. A community in which the same people remain permanently indebted to the same creditors is not a free community. It is a community organized around permanent inequality. And permanent inequality is incompatible with the kind of flourishing that God designed his people to carry. Shemitah was heaven's correction of that system, the built-in, non-negotiable reset that ensured no one stayed in the position of permanent debtor indefinitely. And here is what I need you to receive right now, with the full weight of what it means. God is activating a Shemitah cycle over your financial life in this season. Not because 7 literal years have passed on a calendar, because the condition of your heart, the testimony of your private financial character, and the surrender you made 3 days ago have created the spiritual conditions that make you eligible for the release that Shemitah represents. The neshe, the continuous bite of the creditor, is losing its authority over your financial frequency. The release is being enacted from the realm of heaven, and it is moving toward expression in the realm of the natural. The Shemitah of God is not coming, it is already in motion. Now, let me show you what heaven observed in you during the season when the Nesher was at its heaviest, because the court of heaven does not simply watch chosen ones suffer under the weight of debt and wait passively for the right moment to intervene. It runs a forensic examination of how the chosen one carries themselves under the pressure, what their character looks like when the bite is deepest, what their spirit produces when the drain is most severe. And what it found in you is the specific evidence it needed to authorize the Shemitah. The first thing it observed was your integrity of promise, when keeping the promise cost you something real. In the season, when your financial situation was at its most difficult, when the gap between what you owed and what you had was at its widest, there were people who had a legitimate claim on resources you did not have. Creditors, yes, but also perhaps individuals. People you had made commitments to. People whose trust in you was expressed in financial terms. And you had a choice that most people in that position make differently than you did. You could have disappeared into the avoidance that financial shame makes so tempting. You could have constructed the narrative, delayed the conversation, redirected the attention. The path of least immediate discomfort was wide open, and most people take it. You chose the harder path. You faced the obligation with honesty. You looked people in the eye and acknowledged the debt without pretending it did not exist, without minimizing their legitimate claim, without protecting your image at the expense of their dignity. You chose to be the kind of person who is poor in pocket and rich in character simultaneously, and you chose it not because anyone was watching, not because it produced an immediate reward, but because the standard you hold yourself to does not adjust downward based on your current financial circumstances. And heaven registered that choice with the specific attention reserved for things that reveal the deepest truth about who a person actually is. Because the character that handles financial obligation with integrity when the resources are absent is the same character that will handle financial abundance with integrity when the resources are vast. You have already demonstrated who you will be when you have everything. You showed heaven that person when you had almost nothing. The second thing it observed was your generosity in the middle of the debt. This one I want to speak about carefully, because what you did was not rational by any financial standard, and the irrational nature of it is precisely what made it spiritually significant. In a season when you were on the negative side of a balance sheet, when the responsible, prudent, financially advisable thing to do was to hold every available dollar as tightly as possible, you gave. You found something to release toward someone else's need, or towards something larger than your own situation. A small amount perhaps, maybe an amount that someone else might have described as impractical given your circumstances. But you released it with intention, with faith, with the specific conviction that the God whose law you were acting on was a God whose supply was not limited by your current account balance. Do you understand what you broke in that moment? You broke the logical foundation of scarcity thinking. You acted against the operating system of lack in the most direct and undeniable way possible. You gave from it. And the spiritual principle that governs what you did is as old as the covenant itself. The one who sows sparingly will reap sparingly, and the one who sows generously will reap generously. You planted a seed of generosity into soil that your circumstances said was not fertile enough to plant in. And what that seed is growing into is the harvest that is now approaching your life, with a momentum that the debt cannot stop and the creditor cannot claim. The reason your Shemitah is being activated now, the specific reason, this is the season of your release, rather than the continuation of the drain, is this. You have proven, in the most demanding and unforgiving conditions, that money is not your master. You have demonstrated, through the quality of your choices, when your choices were most costly, that you can be trusted with the position of lender rather than the position of borrower. You have shown heaven the character of the person who will receive the wealth transfer. And heaven has looked at that character and said, sufficient, ready, release. Stop. Let that land fully before we go any further. You did not fail your way to this moment. You faithed your way here. Every act of integrity, every seed of generosity, every moment of worship over a negative balance, every choice to treat the obligation with honor when dishonor would have been so much easier. Those were not just moral victories in isolation. They were the building blocks of the legal case that heaven needed to authorize what is coming next. The case is complete. The verdict has been issued. The Shemitah is in motion. If this is speaking directly into the weight you have been carrying, drop a fire in the comments right now. I want to identify who is in this room at the level this word was released for. Drop it right now. Now, let me give you 5 specific signs that the debt is dissolving and the wealth transfer has already begun. These are not vague spiritual impressions. These are specific, identifiable, real-world manifestations that chosen ones encounter when the Shemitah cycle has been activated in their financial life. Watch for each one and receive it as confirmation rather than dismissing it as coincidence. The first sign is what I call the administrative miracle. In the coming days, watch for an unexpected communication about one of your debts, something that arrives through the ordinary channels of the financial system, but carries an outcome that cannot be explained by ordinary financial logic. A notification about a debt forgiveness program that you had no knowledge of. A letter indicating that an account has been written off and released. A reduction in an outstanding balance that appears without full explanation. An error in the paperwork that resolves in your favor in a way that eliminates or significantly reduces an obligation. A creditor reaching out not to collect, but to settle at an amount dramatically lower than the original balance. The administrative miracle is heaven, using the machinery of the natural financial system to execute the Shemitah in the physical realm. It looks like paperwork. It looks like a bureaucratic outcome. It looks like a fortunate error or a program you happen to qualify for at exactly the right moment. But the timing is not accidental. The qualification is not random. The machinery was always available. God simply waited until the spiritual conditions were met before he moved the right documents to the right desks at the right moment. Watch the mail, watch the email, watch the notifications. The administrative miracle may already be in transit toward you right now. The second sign is what I call the ghost credit. You will observe a deposit, a credit, a positive entry in your financial accounts that you cannot immediately trace to a specific source. Not a large amount necessarily. The ghost credit is often modest in its first appearance, but it will arrive in a way that does not correspond cleanly to any income you were expecting, any payment you had arranged, any transaction you had initiated. And when you try to track it to its source with the ordinary logic of your financial record keeping, the trail will be unexpectedly difficult to follow. Do not dismiss this as an error to be reversed. Receive it as the first material expression of the Shemitah, the first drop from a supply that does not have a human origin, the first confirmation that resources are being moved on your behalf from a ledger that operates outside the ordinary accounting systems of the natural world. The ghost credit is heaven writing the opening entry in the new chapter of your financial record. It is small in amount and enormous in meaning. Receive it with the full weight of what it represents. The third sign is the sudden wealth stream. An opportunity will present itself, possibly from a direction you were not expecting, possibly through a connection you had not been cultivating, possibly in the form of a project, a contract, a partnership, a service, or a product that had never previously appeared on your horizon, that carries with it the specific financial capacity to address your debt situation in a time frame that your previous trajectory made impossible. This stream will not look like what you imagined the breakthrough would look like. The chosen ones who receive sudden wealth streams almost universally report that the source of the stream surprised them. It came from a direction they had not been looking. It arrived through a channel they had not prepared. It appeared in a form they would not have designed themselves. Because God's supply routes are not limited to the paths that human planning can anticipate. He has access to streams that have not appeared on any map you have drawn of your financial future. When this opportunity presents itself, receive it with the discernment to recognize what it is, rather than dismissing it, because it does not match the shape of the breakthrough you had imagined. The stream looks different from what you expected, because it is coming from a source higher than what your expectation had access to. The fourth sign is the piece of the zero balance, before the zero balance exists on paper. This sign may already be present in you, which is why I want to name it clearly. At some point in the very recent past, or possibly in the next few days, you will experience a specific, physical, unmistakable sensation of relief, a lightness in your chest, a reduction in the low-grade, ever-present hum of financial anxiety that has been part of your daily experience for so long that you had almost stopped noticing it was there. An absence of the weight that you had come to accept as a permanent feature of your existence. And the remarkable thing about this piece is that it will arrive before the numbers change, before the balance shows zero, before the paperwork reflects the release, before a single dollar of debt has been legally cancelled or paid in full. The piece will come first, as a prophetic deposit, a spiritual reality stepping into your experience before the physical reality has fully materialized. Because the Shemitah has already been decreed in the realm where things are decided before they appear in the realm where things are seen. When you feel that peace, when the weight lifts without an obvious external explanation, do not question it and do not dismiss it as wishful thinking. That peace is not denial of the circumstances. That peace is information from a realm that sees further than your circumstances currently allow. It is heaven telling your nervous system, it is settled, before your bank statement tells you, it is settled. The fifth sign is the appearance of the number 811. Before I tell you what to watch for, I need to give you the scriptural architecture beneath this number, because what I am about to say is rooted in covenant theology rather than numerology. In ancient Hebrew understanding, the number 8 carries the specific weight of new covenant beginnings. It is the number of the day after the seventh, the number that exists on the other side of every completed cycle, the number of the circumcision on the 8th day that marked every covenant child as belonging to what begins after what ends. In Leviticus, God instructed that every male child in the covenant community be circumcised on the 8th day, specifically not the 7th, which was the day of completion and rest, but the 8th, the day of new covenant inauguration. 8 is the divine signature of new beginning placed permanently on a human timeline. And the number 11, the one that follows, carries the weight of transition and unexpected, disproportionate provision. In Matthew 20, the workers hired at the 11th hour received the same full wage as those who had worked from the beginning of the day. The 11th hour is the hour when heaven chooses to demonstrate that its economy is not governed by the logic of human merit or the mathematics of human effort. The full provision arrives at the 11th hour, not despite the lateness, but precisely because of it, to make it absolutely undeniable that the source of the provision is not the duration of the labor. When the number 811 appears in your life in the coming days, on a receipt, a statement, a timestamp, an address, anywhere in the numerical landscape of your ordinary day, receive it as heaven's compound declaration over your financial life. The new covenant of financial freedom has officially begun, and the 11th hour provision has been fully authorized. The Shemitah is not theoretical. It is on its way, and it is arriving in the specific hour when it will be most impossible to attribute to anything other than the God who orchestrated it. Now I need to speak directly about the warfare that is operating against you in this season of financial release, because the enemy has a specific, targeted, and deeply personal strategy for chosen ones who are standing at the threshold of debt cancellation and wealth transfer. And if you do not identify his tactic clearly before it runs its full course in your mind, it will cost you the freedom that is already in motion toward you. His strategy in this season is shame, not the shame of a specific action, the shame of a financial identity. The accumulated, deeply internalized, quietly devastating belief that you are, at your core, a debtor, that the debt is not something you have, but something you are, that the financial mistakes of the past have permanently defined your category, permanently determined your ceiling, permanently marked you as someone who does not belong in the conversation about wealth transfer and financial freedom, that the Shemitah is for other people, more disciplined people, more spiritual people, people who made better decisions than you made, but that you carry a record that disqualifies you from the level of intervention you are being told is coming. He will use your own memory against you. He will replay the specific decisions that contributed to the debt, the impulse purchases, the bad investments, the misplaced trust, the moment of poor judgment, and he will use the replay not to produce wisdom, but to produce condemnation. Not to help you think more clearly in the future, but to convince you that the past has permanently determined the future. Not to refine your character, but to paralyze your faith. To make you feel so unworthy of the Shemitah that you unconsciously disqualify yourself from receiving it. I want you to hear this with every layer of your being. The Shemitah was not designed for the financially perfect. It was designed for the financially burdened. The law of release was not established as a reward for people who never accumulated debt. It was established as a structural correction for the reality that debt accumulates, that real people, in real circumstances, end up on the wrong side of a balance sheet through a combination of their own choices and circumstances, entirely outside their control. And God, who understands the full complexity of how human beings end up in financial bondage, built the release into the law, not as an exception for the especially worthy, as a covenant right for every person living under his governance. You are living under his governance. The Shemitah is your covenant right. And the enemy's attempt to use your history to disqualify you from your covenant inheritance is not a valid legal argument before the court of heaven. It is a lie dressed in the language of accountability. The weapon against this strategy is prophetic boldness, the deliberate, declared, out-loud refusal to accept the identity of permanent debtor as your permanent address. The decision to move from the posture of a condemned borrower into the authority of a covenant steward who has been legally released by the law of heaven. Say this out loud right now. I am not a slave to creditors. I am a steward of God. Every financial chain is broken by the law of Shemitah. The Neshe has no more authority over my resources, my creativity, or my destiny. I walk in the freedom of the kingdom, and I step into the identity of the lender, not the borrower, from this day forward. Say it again, louder, with more conviction than the first time, because the enemy does not yield to whispered declarations. He yields to the bold, specific, authoritative voice of a chosen one who has decided that shame no longer has residential rights in their financial identity. We are now in the final and most sacred portion of this message. I want you to slow everything down right now, not just your listening, your entire internal pace. Let your breath deepen. Let the noise of everything that still feels unresolved move to the background. Let this moment be what it is. The moment when a word released from the realm of heaven lands in the spirit of a person who has been waiting for it longer than they can remember. The moment when the Shemitah stops being a theological concept and starts being a personal promise. The moment when the release that has been moving toward you in the invisible realm crosses the threshold into the visible one. In the next 24 hours, you are going to receive a specific communication that carries the language of settlement and release. A message, an email, a letter, a notification, or a conversation that contains in some form, in some context, the language of resolution. Words that mean cleared, settled, released, paid, closed, forgiven, or free. It may come in a financial context, directly related to your debt situation. It may come in a completely different context, as a sign from heaven that speaks the language of your need from an unexpected direction. Whatever form it takes, your spirit will recognize it as more than coincidental. It will register as a signature heaven, writing its confirmation of the Shemitah into the physical language of your daily life. When it arrives, I want you to respond with intention. Take a piece of paper. Write on it the largest number that represents your debt, the number that has weighed most heavily, that you have looked at most often, that has felt most immovable. Write it clearly. Look at it for a moment without flinching, because this is the last time you look at this number from the position of someone who is trapped beneath it. Then draw a single, firm, deliberate line through it. Not frantically, not in fear. With the calm authority of someone who is executing a decree that has already been issued in the realm of heaven. Cross it out the way a judge signs a release, the way a creditor marks an account closed, with finality, with authority, with the full understanding of what the action represents in the covenant. And say these words out loud, with every layer of conviction that this message has deposited in you. It is settled. Every debt over my life is cancelled by the Shemitah of God. The Nesher has no more claim on my resources, my creativity, or my destiny. I receive the wealth transfer of heaven not to consume it, but to carry it as a steward of the covenant. I am no longer a borrower, I am becoming a lender. I am no longer defined by what I owe. I am defined by the God who paid what I could not. The release is complete, the transfer has begun, and my financial life will never be the same from this moment forward. Amen. Say it a second time, with the paper in your hand, with the crossed-out number in your sight. Let the first declaration be the decree, and let the second be the seal. Let these words move from your mouth into your body, from your body into the architecture of how you see yourself financially, from your financial self-image into the daily decisions that will begin tomorrow morning to reflect a person who is living in the freedom of the Shemitah rather than the bondage of the Nesher. Receive this prophetic decree over your financial life right now. I declare that the yoke of the creditor over your life is broken as of this moment. Every claim that Nesher has held over your creativity, your vision, your energy, your sleep, and your peace is severed by the law of Shemitah. The bite stops here. The drain stops here. The continuous, patient, persistent extraction of your prosperity by the spirit of debt stops at this declaration, by the authority of the God who built the release into the law before you ever needed it. I declare that the Shemitah of 2026 is active over your financial life right now. This is your year of release. Not the year you begin hoping for it, the year it executes. The administrative miracles are in transit. The ghost credits are being processed. The sudden wealth streams are being redirected toward your accounts. The peace of the zero balance is arriving in your spirit before the paper reflects it. And the number 811 is heaven's own seal on the 11th hour provision that is moving toward you with the precision of a God who has never once been late. I declare that the wealth transfer assigned to your name is not a future event on an uncertain timeline. It is a present tense movement in the invisible realm that is actively crossing into the visible one. The streams are being redirected. The channels are being opened. The resources that have been held in reserve for the season when your character was fully proven are being released into the pipeline that leads directly to your hands. And the only question is not whether it is coming. The only question is whether you will position yourself to receive it with the open hands of a covenant steward rather than the clenched fist of someone who still believes they must earn what heaven has already authorized. I declare that the testimony of your integrity in debt, every creditor you faced honestly, every promise you kept at personal cost, every seed you planted into generosity when the rational voice said you could not afford, to that testimony is the legal document that heaven is presenting as the basis for your Shemitah. You did not earn the release through perfect financial behavior. You qualified for it through character under pressure. And the court of heaven has reviewed the record, and the verdict is clear and final. Released, free, promoted from debtor to steward, repositioned from borrower to lender, cleared for the wealth transfer by the God who established the law that makes it possible. I declare that the spirit of shame and the identity of permanent debtor are completely, thoroughly, and permanently evicted from your financial self-image as of this declaration. You are not a debtor who is hoping to one day be free. You are a kingdom steward who has been temporarily positioned in a season of debt that heaven is now bringing to its divinely appointed end. The position is changing, the assignment is being upgraded, and the person who walks out of this season will not walk out with the posture of someone who barely escaped. They will walk out with the posture of someone who was specifically refined, specifically proven, and specifically positioned by the entire experience to carry the wealth transfer with the wisdom, the integrity, the generosity, and the gratitude that only someone who has lived through the Nesher and been released by the Shemitah can fully carry. I declare that the Nesher, the bite of the creditor, the continuous drain, the persistent claim on your energy and your creativity and your peace is pulling its teeth out of your financial frequency as of this moment. The draining is ending, the extraction is stopping, and the energy that has been going toward servicing debt is being redirected right now toward building the legacy that your assignment requires. The bite is over, the release has come, and what flows into the space that the Nesher occupied is not just relief, it is the abundance of a God who does not simply remove the problem. He fills the space it left with something greater than what was there before the problem began. Chosen one, you came here today under the weight of a number, a specific, heavy, real number that has been defining the edges of your possibility for too long. And now you have the word that changes what that number means. Not a strategy for paying it down slowly over time, a covenant law that dissolves it by divine decree in the season that your character has earned. The Shemitah is not coming for someone who is spiritually perfect. It is coming for someone who kept their integrity in the darkest financial season of their life. Someone who gave from their lack and worshipped over their negative balance and faced their creditors with honor when avoidance was so much easier. Someone who surrendered 3 days ago and in doing so finally made room for the God who was waiting to be their guarantor. That is you. The record has been reviewed, the character has been confirmed, the release has been authorized. And the wealth transfer is not a dream you are hoping for. It is a covenant right that you have qualified for, by grace and by the testimony of who you are when no one is watching. Like this video, right now, as your seal, your declaration that you receive the Shemitah, you release the identity of permanent debtor, and you step forward into the financial freedom and the wealth transfer that the law of heaven has already authorized over your name. Subscribe to Chosen Wealth Wisdom so that every piece of instruction, every prophetic activation, and every strategic word released in this season finds you immediately. This channel exists to walk chosen ones through every phase of the journey, including and especially the seasons when the debt feels permanent and the release feels impossible, because those are precisely the seasons when heaven is closest and the Shemitah is most near. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what is the first thing you will do with your finances the moment the Shemitah manifests in the physical realm? I am reading every single one. I am praying over every name. The Nesher is finished. The Shemitah is active. The wealth transfer has begun, and heaven is applauding. Well done, chosen one. Well done.